Let's sketch the level curves of the function f of xy equals square root of 4 minus x squared minus y squared. In other words, we're going to take z equals square root of 4 minus x squared minus y squared and put in z values. In other words, we're going to put in specific heights to see what the contour of the surface is at that height. So let's use z equals 0, 1, and 2. Okay, so for z equals 0, we put in a 0 for z to tell us what the contour looks like at that height. How am I going to tell what this looks like? Well, let's square both sides, and that gives us 0 equals 4 minus x squared minus y squared. And if we add an x squared and a y squared to both sides, we get x squared plus y squared equals 4. So that's a circle centered at the origin, 0, 0, with radius 2, because 2 squared is 4. For z equals 1, putting in a 1 for the height for z, we have 1 equals square root of 4 minus x squared minus y squared. Again, let's square both sides to get a better handle on what that looks like. And if we do that, we have 1 equals 4 minus x squared minus y squared. And again, I'm going to add an x squared and a y squared to both sides, but additionally, I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. That'll give me x squared plus y squared equals 3. This again is a circle centered at the origin. This time the radius is, well, what would I square to get 3? It would be the square root of 3. And that, by the way, is approximately 1.7. Last, for z equals 0, for z equals 2, I put in a 2 for z, and I have 2 equals square root of 4 minus x squared minus y squared. Again, I'll square both sides, and that will give me 4 equals 4 minus x squared minus y squared. And again, I will add x squared minus plus y squared to both sides, and this time I will be subtracting 4 from both sides, which will give me x squared plus y squared equals 0. Now, the only way for x squared plus y squared to give me a 0 is for them both to be 0, right? Because x squared and y squared are both positive numbers, and the only way for two positive numbers to add up to 0 is for them both to be 0. So in other words, we don't have a circle this time, we have a single point, the point at 0, 0. So let's see what that looks like. So this is our level curves. By the way, one of my math professors at Sac State taught me that the way to graph circles is to draw the circle first and then put in your coordinates. So that's what I'm doing here. That looks like the center. Okay, so this is at 2. This is at square root of 3, which we said was approximately 1.7. And then, so that's our curves for z equals 0, z equals 1, And then for z equals 0, for z equals 2, we have just that single point in the center. By the way, I know our book uses k to label these level curves. I don't really like that because when I see on a graph k equals something, I'm like, what's k? What does that mean? Whereas if I see z, I can figure that that's a z coordinate, in other words, the height of that contour line or level curve. Now, we actually have already graphed this back in an earlier example. And we said the graph was the top half of a sphere. So I'm following my old teacher's advice here and drawing the sphere before I put my coordinate axes in. And that's sphere head radius 2. And we said it was just the top half. Okay, so what did we just do with these contour lines? Well, that contour line where z equals 2, that's just a dot, that's our dot at the top of the half sphere. Our contour line or level curve where z equals 0, that's our radius, that's our circle of radius 2. That's the bottom part of the sphere down there. And what about that contour line at z equals 1? So that is at height 1 above the z-axis. And what we determined was that what we get there is a circular cross-section of radius square root of 3.